All right, maybe I'll get started. And if we had some others come in later, that's okay. So welcome to this workshop. My name is Mandy Goodset, and I am a librarian in the Michael Schwartz Library. And I'm always very excited for an opportunity to talk about avoiding misinformation. I think it's always an important topic, but a lot of people pointed out to me in email that they were excited about this workshop because it seems like a really timely thing right now with the election coming up. There may be more misinformation floating around. So I hope that you get some practical tips that you can both use yourself and that you can share with others that are not, really in-depth research tips, but more quick things that you can do that will help you identify misinformation quickly. So that's the plan. I started this workshop about 3.5 years ago. And at that time, we still hear it, but at that time, the term fake news was everywhere. It was really a popular term. And so I always like to start out by kind of getting on the same page. I think we all hear lots of different definitions of fake news, people using it to mean different things. So if anyone is willing to, in the chat, or if you wanted to unmute, what are some definitions of fake news that you have encountered? And if you don't have any answers, it's okay. I have some answers. Okay, more of an interpretation. Yeah, interpretation, I would agree. It's different nuances to what the expression means. I often do this presentation for students, and we get lots of different answers like news that's biased, or news that's trying to be misleading, or news I don't like, or whatever someone doesn't like. So the upshot of that is that there are lots of different meanings of that term fake news, and they don't all agree with each other. So in general, I'm not going to use that term. I'm kind of leaving it behind. And instead, what we'll talk about is what's called misinformation. So misinformation is inaccurate information spread intentionally or unintentionally. And we often think of is kind of a subgroup of misinformation, which is disinformation. That's intentionally inaccurate information that's meant to deceive and mislead people. So that's really what we're going to look at. But there's still a lot of ways that that can manifest itself, I guess. So here are 7 types of mis or disinformation. First, we have satire or parody. So if anyone has heard of The Onion, it's an example of a pretty popular satire source, which is kind of maybe one obvious answer to what is fake news. It's really trying to be fake news in that it's not really news, but it's kind of presented as news, and it's trying to be funny. So even with The Onion, and The Onion is fairly obvious that it's satire, there are folks who, they just see that, they think, oh my gosh, this is real, and they share it around, and they're very concerned. But there are actually a whole lot of other sites that are satire that are really they're not transparent at all about the fact that they are satire, and it is very difficult to tell that they're just kidding and trying to be funny, and instead they're really just kind of muddying the waters with false information. Then there's misleading content. That's it could be accurate information, but it's being framed in a way that misleads the readers. That's fairly common. Then we have imposter content. That's when real people are impersonated. So on social media sites like Twitter, when you have someone who is pretending to be a famous person or a politician or someone that others will recognize, and they're saying things as that person, that would be misinformation. Then there's fabricated content, which is really just 100% made up, designed to deceive and do harm. That really is just totally false. Then we have false connection, and we'll see some examples, I think, in the presentation today, where you have a real photo, for example, a real image, but the caption for that image doesn't match. So the image was taken at a totally different time and place than what the headline suggests. Or when you see clickbaity headlines and you think, what is that? And you click on it, and then the article itself doesn't really reflect what that headline said. That's false connection. Then we have false context, similar to misleading content when you have real information, but it's shared with false contextual information. So similar to what I just said, when you have a real photo, but it has been shared as if it's in a different context than it really is. And then finally, and this has made a lot of folks kind of more nervous in the recent past, is manipulated content. So for a long time, we've had the ability to manipulate images and make them look like they're showing something that they didn't originally show. But more recently, we've had what are called deep fakes, where basically you can manipulate a video of a real person and make them say things that they didn't actually say, which is really scary. So this is the kind of wide range of mis and disinformation that you might encounter. So before we talk about some strategies for avoiding that, we should talk a little bit about why we even are sharing misinformation in the first place. And we all have this drive in our brains to share misinformation. I want to emphasize that falling for misinformation can happen regardless of how smart you are, how intelligent you are, how much information you have, or how confident you are that you are right. So you might be super confident, like, this is true, but misinformation can still persuade you. And there are some reasons for that have to do with psychology. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard of cognitive bias before. Cognitive bias can be described as limitations in our thinking that can cause errors in judgment. Essentially, they're like shortcuts that lead us astray. Sometimes our mental shortcuts they're very helpful to us, but when it comes to cognitive bias, these shortcuts are leading us to make conclusions that are not always accurate. And one kind of cognitive bias that is very relevant here is called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is, well, here I will go to the next page here. It's seeking information to confirm our beliefs and also avoiding information that conflicts with our beliefs. And we all do this. We do this on our social media platforms. We do this when we search in Google. We do this when we're talking with others. We want to go towards things that help us feel like our beliefs are valid and that we are smart and we are consistent people. And then we avoid things that make us feel the opposite, like maybe we were wrong and we are not consistent. Those sorts of things we kind of turn away from. So that feeling of discomfort when we're confronted with conflicting information is called cognitive dissonance. So when you believe something strongly and you're confronted with some new information that puts that belief into doubt, that feels very yucky. And you can kind of think about it in your own mind. Just think about some belief that you have that you feel really confident about. And think about the idea of facing someone and that person telling you, why you are wrong. That is not a good feeling. We don't like that. We try to avoid that. And one impact of that feeling of like, I need to avoid that, is that if we're forced into that situation where we're confronted with conflicting information, it can lead to what's called the backfire effect, where essentially, instead of just saying, well, maybe I'll soften my position, I've seen this new perspective coming in that's challenging what I believe. We don't soften our position. We don't even just maintain our position. We often actually believe our original belief even more strongly, because we have been given an opportunity to come up with a bunch of reasons, like new reasons, why we're right and that other person is wrong. So, and there's studies to back up this backfire effect. So it's really difficult once you have a belief to change that belief. It's really hard. Facts don't really help. even authorities don't really help because we come up with reasons why that person or that fact is wrong. And we're really good at that. And sometimes the smarter you are, the better you are at explaining away alternative evidence. So, why do we do all of this? Why are we so insistent on keeping our beliefs intact? It has to do with something called identity protective cognition. We want to protect our personal identity. We want to feel like I am a good person. I'm a person with good beliefs, and I'm a consistent person. And I also belong to a tribe, a group of people, and we all share this belief. And I am not going to break off of my group and have a different belief that feels bad to me. It impacts my identity. So it is really difficult for us to change our minds as people, especially when the beliefs we have correspond with the beliefs of others in our group and correspond with our feeling of self-worth. So why should we do it then? If it feels so bad to really question our beliefs and try to find the accurate beliefs, why should we even bother? Why does it matter? So you can put this in the chat if you want, or if you have something to share, you can unmute. Why do you think it's important to be able to identify misinformation for you in your own life? And why do you think it's important for our society, which is something I think we think about as we move towards this big election? Anybody have any thoughts?
Hey, Mandy, if I could chime in here. I mean, I think that at a certain point, when we're incapable of confronting what the reality is, it's bound to catch up to us as a society. I mean, I appreciate how you're laying this out in a psychological perspective, and to a point, we have our own opinions and our own views on it. But there will be certain things that, let's suppose, like climate change, that I think sooner or later it's going to come home to roost, and we can have our own opinion about what it's going to be, but the reality of the situation will come home to roost. And it's important for us to recognize, what is bias, what is opinion, and what is something that is factual and scientifically provable.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So essentially, when we don't have the right information, then we can't really prepare for the future. We can't prepare for reality. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else want to jump in?
I guess I'll chime in. I feel like I just need to be refined, like just to make sure that I know what I know, and to like, because I feel like maybe sometimes I'm being gaslit, and it's like, well, I think I'm right, and then I just want to make sure that I'm still right. But like you said before, we all feel like, I don't like the dissonance, when somebody challenges my beliefs. But I hope that's kind of what you're.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's kind of an inherent feeling of like, I want to know that I have beliefs that are right, like it doesn't, you don't want people to say, hey, you're wrong, and be like, well, am I wrong? Like we want to have certainty about that. So I think regardless of anything else, we just feel like we want to know what's right.
Yeah. And who knew it would be so difficult these days? I guess I shouldn't be so surprised, but I did come from an analog childhood, so.
Yeah, it's only gotten harder. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics. Yeah, so sometimes it's about being able to decide for yourself without having someone who has, some sort of motivation to convince you of something get in the way. Can you decide for yourself? I think ultimately it comes down to decision making, right? Like if to make decisions that are in our own best interest, we have to have the right information. And that's true at the individual level, and it's true at the societal level. If as a society we want to make good choices like how to vote, we have to have the right information. So so it's just important. I hope that you all feel that way, but I have a feeling you do. Okay, any questions at this point before we dive into some strategies for actually identifying misinformation? Yes, I have read that book. It's a great book. Nathaniel has put in the chat. Daniel Levitin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, wrote a book called Field Guide to Lies, Critical Thinking in the Information Age. I found it really helpful too. There's a lot of good information about how to interpret statistics that are presented to us that I thought was useful. Okay, so I'm going to just pop this in the chat. This is kind of a future reference point for you. I put together a research guide about misinformation and how to identify it. So some of the stuff we talk about today, you can follow up in here for more links and stuff like that. So I wanted to give that to you. Okay, so for some fact-checking strategies. So we're going to use something called the Sift Method. It was developed by Mike Caulfield, who's a communications professor, and I really like it. I think that it, instead of asking you to do like a real in-depth deep dive into every single thing you might want to share on social media or wherever, it's a very realistic approach that helps you make quick, fairly reasonable and still careful decisions about what you share online. So we're going to use this example as kind of a frame. So we're going to start with it. So maybe think right now how you would fact check it, and then we'll revisit it at the end, and we'll see if you have some new strategies. So this was shared on Twitter. Rat dies after gorging on cash while stuck in ATM. So the story is that a rat got into an ATM in India and it ate money until it died, which was not good for the rat or for people's money. So maybe think in your mind, how would I check that? Would I check that? Would I share that? All right, so the SIFT method, it's an acronym. The S stands for stop. And this is really important because of the stuff we talked about earlier, especially on social media. If you're seeing something that makes you feel a strong emotion, you should stop. So if you're feeling outrage or a feeling like, yeah, that's right, I agree with that, or anger, things like that, that's when you should probably stop and start using SIFT for all the reasons we talked about. All right, so I stands for investigate the source. So often it's tempting to look at a claim and say, I can tell if that's true or not just by kind of like thinking about it. Like, does it seem true? That's not really the best way to fact check a claim. Often we have to put the claim itself aside and investigate the source. And there are two easy ways to do that. One is to use Wikipedia, and the other is to Google it. And it's really that simple. So we are going to use this example here. So I will summarize it for you. This is a little bit old now. So this is from when Canada legalized pot. And it's a story about how Tim Hortons, I think we have some Tim Hortons around here, had a major donut shortage after cannabis was first legalized in Canada. So I'm mostly going to be using I'm going to try to avoid political examples, which is really hard. And I'm also going to try to keep the examples to things that are not like if you forget whether it's true or not, it's not going to be a big impact. So these examples are kind of silly, but it'll teach you the skills. Okay, so if I wanted to find out if this was true or not, one really easy way is to check this source. And to do that, I can just come up here to the URL. I'm going to delete everything all the way up to this .com, put a space, and then just put Wikipedia. And it's that simple. It should show me, here we go, the Wikipedia page for this source, which is called World News Daily Report. Now, some people are like against Wikipedia. They say this isn't a reliable source. For these sorts of things, Wikipedia is actually quite reliable, especially over time. There are actually a lot of rules that Wikipedia has that help to ensure that it has fairly accurate information. So in this case, should we rely on World News Daily Report for accurate information? What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. Laughing till you're crying emoji. I'm guessing that is no, we shouldn't take it seriously. So it says here that it's a satirical fake news website, right? And it's trying to be funny. So it's another example of a satire site. It's really unclear that it's being satire, but it's trying to be funny. And there were people who thought that that was true at the time. So this took us, what, like 5 seconds? And if we did that, we would see, okay, I'm not going to share this. I'm not going to believe that because this is not a reliable source. So let's do another example here. And you all are going to do this one. So this is a story about a Kohler toilet, Alexa toilet, costs $8,000, and it will flush on command, I believe. Yes, flush by voice. So I'm going to put this in the chat, and I encourage you to use the method that I just did. Sorry, it's going slowly here. To figure out if this source, Tom's Guide, is a reliable source. So I'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, anybody getting any results so far? All right, so I am going to go through the steps, and so you can kind of maybe compare to what you did. So I'm going to come up to the URL. Could not find it on Wiki. Okay, so if you didn't search it, if you search it directly, it's not coming up. Okay, so that's good to know. So we are going to try doing this method of just deleting everything after the .com and then just typing Wikipedia. This one, I will admit, is a little bit trickier. Yes, Nathaniel, yes. Couldn't find one for Tom's Guide. Only Tom's Hardware. Yeah. So if you click on Tom's Hardware, you will find that it is actually the umbrella of Tom's Guide and a few other blogs. So Wikipedia really needs your money, apparently. Okay. So if we scroll through, we see that this site has been around since 1996. There's nothing really jumping out to me. I don't know if you are all seeing anything. Nothing that's saying that this is unreliable or that it's satire or anything like that. So this one looks like it's actually okay. So if we got to that point and we said, okay, well, the source seems okay, I'm not sure about the claim, that's when we would move to the next step of Sift. We don't have to just believe the claim just because we investigated the source and it was okay. So does that make sense to everybody, how you could do that? If you just looked for Tom's Guide in Wikipedia, like Natalie tried, it may not come up. So you might even just Google the name of it and see if you can find anything else about it. The important thing is we're not staying in that site. We're not asking Tom's Guide, are you a good site? We're immediately leaving and trying to find evidence elsewhere. And Wikipedia is a good starting place for that. I do want to also mention that sources themselves can be evaluated based on how they acquire and share information. So, for example, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, one leans a little bit left, one leans a little bit right politically, but they both have a lot of mechanisms in place to try to ensure accuracy. So they both have a reputation that they want to keep. They both issue corrections. They both also have folks on their staff who are supposed to just fact check things. That's really important. For scholarly publications, we look for peer review. Is anyone reviewing this? That's where that fact checking team comes into play. When you're seeing things happen live, like live interviews on cable news channels where people are talking back and forth to each other, there's very little opportunity for that fact checking to happen. So you should be wary of those sources versus ones that try really hard to be accurate before they share that information with you. You also want to look at the credentials of the author. Does that person have expertise in that area? Do they have education that makes them qualified? Do they have professional experience? Those are all things that you can look up, and that's more of a deep dive thing, but you absolutely can Google that person and see if you can find more information about them and whether others in their field respect their work and agree with their work. That's really important. And I should say one other thing for this. Just because someone has a degree in something doesn't make them an expert in everything. You want to make sure that their expertise matches the claims that they're making. And I think climate change is a good example. You'll see folks, maybe a geologist making a claim about climate change. We really want a climate scientist being the one making claims. Those are the claims that we really want to be looking at, not someone who has a science degree in something. And that is, you see that fairly frequently with some of these folks. Yes, being an expert in math doesn't make you an expert in physics. Exactly. And then finally, you want to question what incentives are in place for the source to get the facts right. So is their business model about selling something? Is it about having this reputation for being accurate? What is it that they're trying to get? Where's the money coming from? And let that help you decide whether the source is one that's reliable in general. One thing that you will see sometimes, my slides will go here, okay, is sponsored content. And sometimes it's very subtle. And I see this especially with students on social media. They're often watching videos or they're on Instagram and they're seeing examples of things that are basically ads, but it's not totally clear. It's someone that they like hearing from and that person is endorsing something and really they've been paid to do that. So I don't have any examples on social media, but I have some other examples of potential sponsored content, and I want to see if you all can identify whether it's sponsored or not. So we won't go through all of these, but just a couple of them maybe. All right, so here's our first example. You can see it looks like an article. Is this sponsored content? What do you all think? I can do a slow scroll here. Any thoughts? You could do a thumbs up if you think it's sponsored or a no in the chat or something if you don't. Okay, Terry says she doesn't know. Nathaniel, at the top it says something about sponsored content. It's probably a little hard to see, but you can see here, sponsor generated content. This is a Wall Street Journal Custom Studios. Yes, very good. Natalie spotted it. It says Netflix Narcos. So essentially, this is an article that looks very much like a Wall Street Journal article, but it was written specifically to kind of get people interested in this new Netflix show called Narcos. So it's all about cocaine traffickers. And it is actually an article. But as you might imagine, its goal is to try to get people to watch a TV show. So we might have a little more skepticism when reading something like this. Oh, very good, Nathaniel. Yeah, I didn't notice, but it says add up here. If you go to the end, you'll see that they even say at the bottom that WSJ Custom Studios is part of Wall Street Journal, but it is not, the news organization was not involved in creation of this content. So they're trying to be very clear, like, this is not the news, this is our advertising department trying to basically get some ad revenue. But, as Terry said, it's kind of hard. You can't really tell at first glance that this is sponsored. So it's really important to kind of keep your eyes open for that. Maybe we'll do one more. Oh, that one's kind of hard. Natalie, great question. If it's sponsored, does that mean it's incorrect? No, it doesn't mean that necessarily the information is correct, but we want to make sure that we are on our guard a lot more if we know that the motivation for someone to present this information is not necessarily to get the facts right. That may not be their top priority. Their top priority might be to sell something to you. So you may decide, you know what, I'm going to go to a different source that has a different motivation, or you may decide to continue just being a little bit more skeptical, more careful. So here's another one. This one's maybe a little bit obvious. Is this sponsored information? Okay, I got a yes and a sponsored already. Anybody catch who sponsored it? Yes, H&M. Good one. So here it is, sponsored by H&M. So this site published this article about recycling your clothes because H&M actually has a program where you can send them your used clothes and they will recycle them for you. So clearly there's some sort of, that brings in some money for them because they paid this site to talk about recycling your fashion for a better future. And they specifically even talk about H&M's program in this article. So to Natalie's question, is this false information? I mean, it's true. H&M does do this program. But if I was doing like broader research about recycling fashion and maybe its impact on other countries or how much good it does or those sorts of things, I probably wouldn't go to this article sponsored by H&M to come to those conclusions. So, any questions about sponsored content?
I do actually have a question. So
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it wrong to use the sponsored information? I mean, your sound is off.
Muted.
Sorry, thank you. Okay. So it's not wrong, but it's basically it's up to you. So if your goal is to have really accurate information, it's going to be harder if the sources that you're using are sponsored, I think. So it's usable, but you're going to want to be extra careful.
Okay.
That would be my advice. Okay, so that was all. That was the longest one. Yep, that was the longest one, I. So we did stop, investigate the source, then find trusted sources is F in Sift. So find trusted sources, fortunately, is pretty easy. So this is about the claim itself. So let's say we want to actually see, is this claim true or not? The quickest and easiest way is to not do it yourself, to just go to a fact-checking site and see if they have the answer. these are folks who do this all the time. They are experts. They can do those deep dives for you. And it's just the quickest and easiest way to go. So I have a few examples on the slide here. There are more in that research guide I linked. So I usually use Snopes. I know some folks are worried that Snopes has a bias of some kind. The thing about Snopes is they always break down exactly how they got to the conclusion they got to. They don't just say it's false or it's true. They really break it down. And so if you're worried about it, you can absolutely read through, look at their evidence, and do more investigation yourself. So let's do an example of using a fact-checking site. So I think this is kind of tangentially political. I think this is my only example. So this is, hopefully you can see it. Maybe I think it's on Facebook. No, it's on Twitter. It's a video of a large crowd, and it says, wow, check out this huge group of bikers gathered to pray for President Trump and the First Lady. The country's behind you, Mr. President. So this was right around the time that Trump got coronavirus. So if I wanted to check this, one really easy thing I could do is just go to a fact-checking site and do a search. So I have Snopes.com pulled up over here. And here's where you would probably you might need to experiment with some keywords. So apologies, this is quite slow here. All right, so I'm gonna just put in biker, oh here, bikers praying for Trump. There we go. Clearly I've looked for this before. And you could go to a different fact-checking site if you wanted to. This is just one that I find has pretty good coverage, and it's been around for a long time. Sorry, this is my computer these days. Okay, great. This looks like the question I'm asking. Were these bikers praying for Trump at Walter Reed? So part of the claim was that these were bikers right outside Walter Reed Medical Center. So we want to know, is that really what was happening? So here they have a label miscaptioned. So if we scroll down, there we go. Okay. You might have to just take my word for it because it's really slow. Okay, here we go. It's getting there. Essentially, this is a real video, but it's being contextualized in a misleading way. So this is actually a whole bunch of bikers in South Africa who are protesting violence against farmers there. And I believe this took place in 2019, I think. But anyways, so this has nothing to do with what it's being framed as. And this is important, like when you see these claims that just like a person is making, and then you have like just an image or a video without any other information, you should really be worried in those cases. So here, this person just took, or maybe it wasn't even this person, someone took this video and then provided this misleading caption with it. And I found that out in, if my internet was better, it would be probably like 5 seconds because I'm letting Snopes do the work of fact checking it. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to close that. Okay. Well, before I give you an example, I just wanted to show you what you could do if you're not finding something in Snopes. So rather than reopen Snopes, I will just tell you, for this example, I tried Snopes and there wasn't an exact match with this. But you can see here, there are 4 envelopes. They look kind of like ballots. And it says, woohoo, I get to vote 4 times this year. No, voting by mail is completely safe. Nothing can go wrong here. It's very sarcastic. So one thing you can do if you're not finding it in Snopes or elsewhere, you can just Google this claim. And you may not get the exact answer that you're looking for. So in this case, if I Google, I don't know, 4 ballots, 4 ballots, voter fraud or something. Okay. No, I want 4 ballots. Well, anyways, we won't go through all these, but you get a sense as you're going through that some of the confusion about these sorts of issues, like did this person get multiple ballots, have to do with whether they got a ballot or whether they got a ballot application. And so if I go back to my source, my original source, I can take a closer look. I can stop and reevaluate here. And when I look closer, it says, vote at home ballot request form, do not discard. So in this case, these are not 4 ballots, these are 4 ballot request forms, and you can send in a zillion ballot request forms. You should only get 1 ballot, and that's the important thing. So these sorts of things have come up a number of times in this particular election. Yes, thanks, Nathaniel. Yes, I have kind of an example later of doing reverse image searching, but that is a great thing to do as well. And that's a good one to do in situations like this that are on social media. You can, if it's just an image, this is just an image from somewhere, you can do a search and try to find where it originally comes from. Okay, so here's your example. As I promised, it's very silly. So this is some pictures of this guy and his dog, who, it says, guess who's starting off their spring tour of libraries and bookstores? These guys right here. First stop, Buffalo Library, blah, blah, blah. And this is on Instagram. And he is claiming that his dog is 450 pounds. So go ahead and take a moment and see if you can fact check whether this guy and his 450-pound dog are really touring bookstores and libraries. And then let me know what you find. Okay, great. Nathaniel found it. Does anybody else find it successfully? This was a fairly easy one to find in Snopes. So if you just search 450-pound dog, it says, is this 450-pound dog real? So what was really happening? Does anybody find out? Yes, Natalie, you're right. Yes, Ashley, is April Fool's Day joke. So this man's dog is real, but it is not 450 pounds. It's a normal sized dog, but for April Fool's Day, he posted some photos of him and his giant dog. I thought he did a good job of editing these. Someone in a previous class actually went to this guy's Twitter and they looked up this guy and they found lots of photos of him with like a normal sized dog. And they said that was how they checked it. I thought that was a good idea too. So yes, funny. Unfortunately not a very serious issue, but hopefully that was pretty easy to just look it up in Snopes. So go ahead and get in the habit of doing that. If you're seeing claims that really make you feel strong emotions like that, I mean, in this case, it was mostly like disbelief. But yeah, that's a quick and easy thing to do. All right, so those are stop, investigate the source, and find trusted sources. The last piece here is the T. It stands for trace claims back to original content. So this is the last part here. So unfortunately, it would be nice if we could just, go to the source and check out that source, or look at the claim and fact check the claim. But sometimes, actually fairly often, what you're looking at is actually not from that source originally. It's someone reposting information from elsewhere. And for example, if you've judged a source, if you go to the bottom of that source or on the side, you'll see other stories that look kind of like this, and you might think like, oh, well, now I can judge these claims too. But these are coming from all over the place, and these different sites have paid for their content to appear. You can see it says sponsored links. So I'm going to have to, for each of those, do a new evaluation. And I think what you find even more often is that when you're looking on social media, people are making claims and they're using information from somewhere else. So here's an example we're going to do together. This guy has tweeted, "It might be time to ditch the sunscreen." And he has a link to something about the FDA warning that chemicals from sunscreen could enter your bloodstream. So you can follow along if you want. See if this works. So the first thing we'd want to do is trace this claim back to the source. So we could evaluate, I forget his name, John Doe, and evaluate him as the source. But for this claim, it might not even be worth doing that. We might just go back to the information that he is citing. So here we go to moms.com, and our first impulse might be to say, well, what's moms.com? That's a good impulse. But we might even look at this article to see, is moms.com even the one making this claim, or are they just sharing this from somewhere else? So we can see that they are talking throughout about a study from the US Food and Drug Administration. And here they talk about a study published in JAMA, which, if you know, is an important journal in the medical field. So maybe instead of judging moms.com and their claims, I'm going to go back even further and see if I can get more information here. And here we are, we're not on JAMA, we're at CNN Health. But before we go back even further, you'll notice something about this article. So remember, the claim of our tweeter was that we should just ditch the sunscreen. So here they're talking about the same article from JAMA, and they said right here, FDA recently said that these chemicals need to be researched by manufacturers before they could be considered generally safe and effective. So should you stop using sunscreen? Absolutely not, experts say. And then they go on to explain why you shouldn't ditch the sunscreen, and they talk at length. And if we wanted to, we could look at some of their sources as well, which wouldn't be a bad idea. We could go to that actual JAMA study, but already we've seen that that original claim was pretty inaccurate, completely inaccurate. And it was very misleading because we have all of these steps back to the original source, and the message got kind of twisted along the way. So does that make sense to everybody? Yes, okay. I would do more, but my computer can't really handle any more than this. I'm stuck in here. Okay. I think, well, I don't remember if I have an example. We're going to try to go back to the slides here. So those are our 4 steps. Oh yeah, the other thing that's under trace back to the original source is what Nathaniel was talking about, and that's doing reverse image searching. And I will just describe it to you because my slides are so slow. If you're using Chrome to do a search and you see an image, you can right-click on that image, and there will be an option for you to do a Google image search for that image. And that's a really great way to do things like, if you're seeing something claiming this is a picture of an event that happened, it's a good idea to see if you can do a reverse image search of that. because sometimes you'll see that actually that happened in a totally different country at a totally different time. So you want to double check those things. You can do a reverse image search of it. Here we go. It's getting there. It's very slow. Okay. So I have an example here. It doesn't go super well, but it's an image of a whale. And the whale image goes along with the story about plastic pollution. You can see the whale has a lot of plastic coming out of its mouth. And if I right click on that image of a whale, eventually, here we go. If I right click on it, I can do search Google for image. Now in this case, this is like the only example I could find that hasn't been debunked already. But you'll see that this Google image search doesn't go great. So what I might do, because a lot of these are not in English, so I don't totally know what they're talking about. So what I might do, instead of trying to dig through this, I could find visually similar images, or I can even just go to Snopes and look up plastic pollution whale, which I won't do because I'm sure that will take 500 years. But what you find is that this image is actually an art installation that is trying to draw awareness to plastic pollution and how it's killing whales, but that a whale did die after digesting 64 pounds of trash. So it's kind of just miscaptioned information. The image was kind of used out of context, but it is an image that is paired with a real story. So that one's another one you can do here. So before we wrap up here, I just want to return to the example we had at the beginning, and maybe you all can give me some ideas of what you might do now to fact check this example. So here is our rat that has eaten so much cash in an ATM that it died. So what are some things, first of all, how does this particular story make you feel? Does it make you feel any strong emotions of any kind? Okay, grossed out. Same. I feel that as well. Disgusted. Maybe kind of like, whoa, did that really happen? That's really gross. And kind of sad. Okay, so then we might say, okay, I'm going to stop before I share this. It seems kind of crazy. I want to stop. So then we're going to move on to I for investigate the source. How could we investigate this source? Yes, you can see I have a lot of examples from John Doe. I don't think he has a real account. He's involved in helping teach people about misinformation. Yes, check mandatory.com. So you could Google it, you could put it into Wikipedia, right? And see, is mandatory.com a legitimate site or not? Is it trying to be funny? Good one, Barb. Yes, right click on the image, do a reverse image search. Is this really a rat that has died from eating cash? Very good. What could we do to find trusted sources about this claim about a rat dying after eating cash in an ATM? Yep, go to Snopes. We could go to Snopes or some other fact-checking site to see if this is real. So I encourage you to try any of those out. I'll tell you that this really did happen, but it was shared out a lot as happening all over India, and it really only happened in one place in India. So unfortunately, this poor rat did die eating cash in an ATM. So that's kind of applying what we learned. And I hope this was helpful for you and it gave you some ideas of how to do this kind of fact checking. If you have any questions or want to nerd out about this anymore, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Please feel free to reach out. And if you're an instructor and you would like to work with your students on these skills, I'm happy to visit your class and talk about it because it's unlikely that they're getting this information somewhere else. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
That was great. Thank you.